Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, collectors of all ages, it is Aussieverse and we are back. I am Omnibo. This is Sharif. We also have the legend Cliff from Cliff on Comics joining us today because we are here to talk about the stories, creators, and worlds that shaped pop culture as we know it. Today's guest is someone whose impact on comics is almost impossible to overstate. He began his career at DC Comics while still a teenager, went on to become one of the most influential writers in the medium, and ultimately served as president of DC Comics, helping guide the company through decades of creative and cultural change. As a writer, editor, historian, and executive, he's worked with some of the greatest creators of all time and played a key role in shaping the modern DC universe, from legendary characters to landmark stories. It's a real honor to welcome a true giant of the industry. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Levitz to Aussieverse.
Thank you very much. It sounds like not only is everything larger in Australia, but you've got a larger view of everyone, including me. But I
well, this is, we've had a big week this week on Aussieverse. We had Danny Fingeroth on earlier in the week. And now we've got yourself to close it out. So we just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Cliff is usually not on Aussieverse. He pops in every now and then. But when I told him that you were coming, he had to be here because, as he mentioned just before we started recording, you helped raise him. So
thank you, and Chris Claremont for being there for me when nothing else was.
Those moments are really strange moments. There was one guy at San Diego Con a few years back who came over and explained that what had gotten him through high school, which was his challenging years, was the romance between Wildfire and Dawnstar. And I tried to process that. So the romance between a bodiless guy and a girl with wings made the world make sense to you. Okay, whatever worked for you, I'm happy to have provided.
You know what? Although that's not what spoke to me back then, I can relate because I'm sure that this person felt alone and an outsider like Wildfire, and the fact that somebody could love him anyway probably made that young man feel like somebody could love him too one day. And that's what I imagine.
Well said, Cliff. Okay.
Well, the first thing that I'd like to ask you, Paul, is what first pulled you into comics as a reader yourself, and when did you realize that this could be your life's work?
Well, I was an omnivorous reader. I read anything I could get my hands on, and in America, in my generation, comics were a universal childhood reading experience. I encountered them first in the older kids' cartons that they would have in their garage of just comics piled up. Nobody collected them in an organized fashion in the early 1960s. And my babysitter handed me an Action Comics 300 to keep me quiet. And there was an ad in it for get a year's subscription for $1, and I managed to snooker my parents into sending that in. And that took me down the rabbit hole. It's in terms of being something I never expected this to be my life's work. I realized that it might be something that I could do professionally as part of my life. Reading the letter column that first talked about Jim Shooter working for comics, because it announced that a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, whatever the number was, had written an issue of the Legion. And I was about 9. I was like, oh, well, I'll be 13 or 14 one day, whatever the number was. It's the first time I could sort of connect to the humanity of somebody behind the screen of the stage. When I got into the field, after having done the fanzine for a number of years and various fan activities, I was figuring I was going to finish up my degree and go do something for IBM or one of the other, what we now call tech companies, but they didn't use that terminology in those days. But I was a science brat. but this was fun, and it would pay my way through college. And I kept having fun, and I kept making money. And then Jeanette Kahn showed up almost exactly 50 years ago, and I had the chance shortly thereafter to go full time. Yeah, all right, I'm having fun. I've got enough saved. I can go back to college if I need to. I'll take my chances for a while. At that point, I was so far down the rabbit hole that apparently there is no crawling out ever.
Fair enough.
It's a fantastic rabbit hole.
Because you did start very, very young. What did the comic industry feel like from the inside back then?
It was really a weird time in comics. There's a marketing concept called product life cycle that you don't hear talked about relative to comics often, but that is very powerful for understanding that process. And the comic book that was born in the 1930s had a variety of very distinctive marketing qualities. It was cheap. It was cheaply produced. It was ubiquitously available as an impulse buy. It wasn't anything anyone went shopping for. You went up to the rack and you looked at the pretty covers and maybe liked Superman better than Spider-Man or vice versa. Or maybe it was the fact that there was a gorilla on the cover that attracted your eye, and that's how you made your choice. That product was dying in the early 1970s. There was no question about it. The number of newsstands that were carrying comics in America was going down every year. The general efficiency of the newsstand business for all sorts of magazine product was starting to decline radically in the country. That wouldn't be noticeable for the big magazines for another 20 years, but it was already really plastering the comic book industry. So the older guys in the industry, and there were a lot of them around still who've been there since the 40s, were basically sitting there saying, please, Lord, let this last until my pension kicks in. I need another year. I need another 5 years. They're trying to do a good job. It's not that they were zoned out, but they were very definitely aware of the impending doom. The cohort of younger people who had started to come in from fandom over the previous 5 or 6 years in some significant numbers were all saying, yeah, I'm going to do this for 2-3 years. Then I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to write TV. I'm going to write cartoons. I'm going to write the great American novel. I'm going to get my real job. It was no one on either end of the spectrum who expected to be in comics any length of time, which was a strange world to be a part of. But it was full of creativity. It was full of mostly very nice human beings. And it was amazing to be allowed in as a 16-year-old puppy and be treated as though I was an adult and part of it. Someone was asking me yesterday or the day before what it felt like when I got to write Stalker at age 17 and had Ditko drawing the book. And wasn't I amazed by that? Well, no, they were just the guys who drew comic books. And yeah, I knew what they had done in the course of their career, but they were just a couple of the old guys who would show up and do this stuff. And you got to do this stuff if you're doing something reasonably interesting. Very strange moment.
Yeah.
Well, seeing how we are at today, how was it that it didn't seem like it could be a lifelong career working in comics, whether you're writing it or
well, how long do you think you're going to have a lifelong career as a sailor on the Titanic? After you hit the iceberg, it was very clear the ship was sinking. And it wasn't just that DC was sinking, the entire industry was sinking. The rate at which one company was sinking was a little different than the other. But when I came in the business, in depending on how you measure it, 1972, 1973, Marvel was probably the only company making a nominal profit on its publishing business. DC was making money overall because of all the licensing, the T-shirts like Bo was wearing, the cartoon shows. We had Super Friends on the air, but the comics themselves were not a good business, and kind of sat there wondering, which moment is the owner going to wake up and say, maybe we don't need to be doing this anymore? So nobody felt comfortable betting on that for the long run, even emotionally.
Sounds like a stressful time. Clifford.
I have so many things.
I know.
Oh my God, there's so many. It's such a shame. I met you at a signing for Action Comics 1000.
Oh wow.
And but like I spoke to you so little, and everyone is there from Action 1000, and Mitch is there from Terrificon, and everybody's just talking all over each other, and like it's just like a haze. And after that day, I was like, oh my God, if I ever get a chance to talk to Paul again, I have so many things to talk about. Like one of them was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you were once quoted as saying, I really hope Warner Brothers doesn't really like pay attention to us over here at DC Comics, and how that could be an eventual bad thing, and also how we sometimes have seen that come to fruition.
I don't recall having said literally that. I've been accused of it a number of times.
Okay, that's what I keep wondering. Like, is this something I've just heard over and over, or do I remember reading it?
There's a mythology in the business that we tried to keep DC quiet. The reality is we were part of what was called Warner Publishing as a corporate unit from 1968 to 1989. In 1989, we moved over to being part of Warner Brothers. And the Warner Brothers corporate philosophy at that point was that the people who headed the divisions should not be public figures. That the guys who ran Warner Brothers in total, Bob Daly, Terry Semel, very bright, very decent human beings, were the public figures. And yeah, you're running your business. You have to. The people in your segment of the entertainment industry have to know who you are and have to respect you, but we don't want you quoted in the New York Times speaking for it. So it wasn't that we were keeping ourselves quiet. It's that the philosophy was we weren't the ones who were supposed to be the voices. On top of that, our egos were not driven by seeing ourselves in the New York Times. There was a lot of work to do. Comic book business was growing rapidly in those years. Had a lot of challenges in some of them. And that's where our energy was focused. Marvel in many of those years had been a public company or had been up for sale several times during that time. Well, when you're up for sale, you're jumping up and down saying, hey, look at me, I'm wonderful, look how terrific I am. Wouldn't you love to marry me? It's like, it's the corporate equivalent of being on a dating site, right? You've got to make yourself look as good as you can again and again and again. And the personalities that were running Marvel in many cases, or at least some of them, loved the attention. We weren't for sale. If somebody had come in with an outrageous amount of money, they certainly could have bought us. But that's the nature of the corporate world. But we weren't, and we weren't considered a star, an integral part of the parent corporation. We were a necessary little cog in the wheel. So let the guys who are driving the bus be the stars.
Okay.
So going from being a writer to an executive, how did being a writer shape the way you later approached leadership and decision making?
Well, because I had lived among the community of the freelancers and they remained very much my social friends in the process, I think I had a better understanding of the freelance dilemmas of life than the average suit who would get parachuted into the business.
Yeah.
You know, freelance writers and artists live a fairly unconventional life, economically, functionally. There's parts of it that are wonderful. You have a lot of freedom and independence. Creative work is tremendously emotionally rewarding, intellectually rewarding. It's economically very challenging. You know, I have 3 kids. 2 of them work in serious work with advanced degrees. They're going to make a good living their entire life, whether they stay at their current occupation or they bounce around a little bit. The third one, the only one who liked what I did for a living, is working in the entertainment industry. He's doing very well. He's a production guy for Channing Tatum. If you saw the movie Blink Twice about a year ago, he got his first full producer credit on it.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yes.
Cool kid. He's doing great, and he's making good money. But there's no guarantee he'll make anything next year, because it's the nature of the creative businesses to have that kind of volatility. Well, if you've spent your life being a conventional accountant or a conventional business person, you may understand that intellectually, but you've probably not heard the stories of the impact of it. Oh shit, I'm not getting any more work because the editor who was buying all my stuff retired. Oh, nobody explained to me that taxes aren't taken out from freelance checks. The IRS caught up with me. I owe them 5 years of back taxes. How many years is it going to be before I'm okay? You know, these are real stories of real friends sitting around the poker table on a Friday night. And the fact that I understood that on a very concrete level must have affected how I viewed working in it. And I think the fact that I had shown that I could be a writer to a high professional standard meant that I was tolerated or respected more by the freelancers than the average suit, because it was confusing. They couldn't understand why one of them could also be one of them.
Yeah.
You know, can you be a Hatfield and a McCoy? That's American silly mythology. I don't know if it translate in Australian, but I'm sure you've got a version of it. Montagues and Capulets, if we go back and steal from Shakespeare instead. But I think it helped.
Fantastic. Did you ever struggle balancing your creative instincts with the business realities of running DC?
You know, individual decisions, you know, are always a little bit of a challenge on that. You know, do we keep this comic running longer because the writers and artists want to finish up a storyline even though it's losing X dollars an issue? Well, yeah, sometimes you did, because I remember vividly Walt Simonson's always been very, very appreciative years later about getting to finish up a storyline they were doing in a book called Hercules Unbound, and we got them an extra issue or 2 to do it. Well, you get 2 things out of that. One, you buy some additional faith from the creative community. But the second is you buy a different relationship with the readers. You know, if you're going to cancel comics in the middle of storylines with your readers, it's one more reason for readers not to get involved in the next new thing you do.
Yeah.
I don't mean to say that we always managed to do that. I remember vividly, and we had to abandon the shadow middle of the story because we just couldn't get the story finished in any reasonable length of time, and we had a license that was running out. But generally speaking, we could try to find ways that balance the needs. You know, there's a way of looking at a business to say your customers matter, your retailers matter, your distributors matter, your suppliers matter, freelancers in the case of comics certainly matter, as well as your owners. Employees certainly matter. They're all what are called stakeholders. And in stakeholder theory, you understand that you have obligations to all of these groups. Yeah, you have to deliver a profit on a certain reasonable basis to your owners because they've put money into a business and they expect to make a return if it's going to stay around. But people should be able to make a decent living. Readers should be able to believe you're giving them the right quality product. I'm guzzling Coca-Cola while we talk, product placement. As a consumer, I have to have confidence when I buy a can of Coca-Cola that it will be what I expect it to be. And 99.9999999 times, it is. Coca-Cola delivers on its promise. It's not a very complex promise. And they've been at it for 100 plus years. They should know how to do it by now. But that's your job. And you gotta make sure everybody is reasonably taken care of in the process.
With so many stakeholders to keep in mind, you've got the owners, you've got the readers, and all of the other people that you've mentioned. Seems like you're juggling a million things up in the air and hoping one doesn't fall to the ground.
If only one falls to the ground, you're doing great. Comics are a complicated business. In the peak years, I guess I was running it, we were producing maybe 1,300 products a year. And they're each a little bit unique. That's a very complicated product mix for any business. We were selling through several different channels of distribution, plus selling internationally, whether through licenses or distribution. We were involved in multiple industries because of the licensing side of the business. So, on any given day, I could be working on a toy deal, a movie deal, a TV deal, a video game deal, a t-shirt deal. Things are going to go wrong. There's no question. The batting average is never going to be 100%. It's not possible. You just hope the ones that fall to the floor aren't the most important ones, or they're ones that you can pick up afterwards and put back in the rotation somehow. I made my share of mistakes along the way. I like to think that they were mostly because we were working with imperfect information from time to time, or it was a reasonable judgment for the number of places that were involved. But some of them where I just didn't make as good a call as I might have on another day. That's just going to happen when you're doing it day in and day out.
Yeah, it's like Danny said. Danny said the other day, you're making so many decisions. You can't be stressing about making the right decision every single time. Otherwise, you're never going to get to the next decision and the next one and the next one after that. You can't be bogged down.
Well, you got to keep things moving. You got to do the job. You got to recognize. I had a long-standing kind of running argument with a good friend who's a cardiologist about who had the tougher job. And he would make the argument that somehow my job was tougher because I was doing all of these things. and people call and wake you up in the middle of the night, and if you give the wrong answer to what they say, they die. And you think, I have the tougher job? If I put a bad comic book, somebody doesn't smile. I mean, that's and maybe they've wasted $5 or $10, but they're not dead. I don't think I ever killed anybody in the process. Some fixed characters here and there, but not any living people. I don't. And he said, "Well, but it's just science. There is a right answer." I said, "At 3 a.m, there's a right answer without all the information."
He found a way, apparently, correct?
He killed a lot of people. He was a very well-regarded cardiologist. But it's every job. You're right. You have to make the decisions as you're going, and you have to keep going. And you have to understand you won't always make the right one.
And sometimes your decisions have no impact on what the result was going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many forces at work in all of these situations. Sometimes the world is completely random in it.
I wish the owners of Netflix thought like you, because I don't watch their shows now, because as soon as I do, I know something's going to get cancelled. So I'm not watching the new stuff anymore until it's at least 2 or 3 seasons in.
Well, I mean, that's one of their business problems. They have to figure out how to get past this. They've built a set of mathematic algorithms that say this can work, and they've structured their deals so that the fees to the rights holders and the performers get more expensive in years 3 and years 4, which gives them kind of a wake-up call to say, well, should we spend all that extra money to do another season of this? And and over time they'll figure out what serves them better.
Cliff, before we go to your question, I am just going to highlight Matt's one here, our first question from the audience, and that is, being a legend yourself, how aware were you as it was happening of just how special so many of the writers and artists were and the stories you were all making?
Not nearly, I guess, would be the answer.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of it, they're just people.
Yeah.
Right? We're all just people, and we're all doing our jobs. Here and there, you would look at a particular piece of work that was coming through and say, yeah, this is as good as it gets. This is something that will be remembered. Dark Knight, Watchmen, Kingdom Come, Darwin Cook's New Frontier, Sandman, things like that had an obviousness as they were in progress. Alan's Swamp Thing. But for the most part, it's just, we're people. These were the people who sat around the poker table with me for years. I knew which one was a careful bettor and which one was a silly bettor, and which one who would take money from me and which one would likely leave money on the table. And just people.
Yep, fair enough.
I love the poker table concept.
I think one thing that fans don't realize, because maybe you can't, is when you step behind the curtain, the world changes. And there's certainly a moment at the beginning of that when it's like, oh my God, they let me in. And whether it's imposter syndrome where you're saying, why did they let me in? Or I really don't have anything, I really don't belong here. Or whether you're egotistical and say, oh yeah, they realized I'm the next coming. But either way, you look around at that beginning and it's like, wow, I'm here and I'm doing this. And by day X, oh yeah, I'm going to work again. This is, I bet this is better than having an honest job. My assistant of many years, a woman named Linda Fields, used to keep the phone log on a scratch pad in her office outside mine of, who I had to call back. And, once in a while I'd walk out and look at the scratch pad, and on a particularly good day, it might be Chris Nolan, Neil Adams, the printer, Steve Jeppy, and John Romita called to say thank you for a little reprint check he got for something. And I just, hit my head against the wall and say, okay, schmuck, 14-year-old you would have killed somebody to have access to this. And you're just sitting here saying, oh God, I got to let Neil yell at me again. Are we in the middle of what did we do wrong this time? Get him on the phone, Linda. Let's see what we can do.
I heard Neil was very passionate.
He had a lot of complicated beliefs, not just about comics, but about physics and evolution and many things. But he was a passionate fighter for what he believed in. And as a result, not always an easy person to negotiate with or work with to solve a problem. But he was a force for good in the industry for many years.
No, you mentioned about having all these feelings, having to call this Legends back, it seems from someone could just say, "Oh, it seems so jaded of all of this." I mean, is it because you've been in the industry for too long? You've been behind the scenes and you've seen all the stuff that happens?
Well, because these are just people, right? This is everybody that I worked with, and we're just people together. And their faults, their foibles. Some of them are total pain. Some of them are a joy. Most people are some mixture of the two. But you're just doing your job. I mean, I don't know what you guys do from 9 to 5 in most cases. Cliff was telling me a little bit about what he does. But when you work in any environment, you have issues with your boss. You have issues with someone who works for you, or someone you work with, or someone you're doing business with. It doesn't mean you hate them or love them, or that you think they're a fool or a genius, but nothing works perfectly in life. So you get used to dealing with all of that, and you work through it. And if you do it for years and years and years, it's very hard for me to get amazed looking at a page of comic book art, because how many thousands of them passed through my hands? Thousands of them were an inch away from me. I can take joy in the ones hanging on the walls, or looking through some original art bin at a comic convention and saying, "Oh yeah, I hadn't seen any of Kurt Schaffenberger's pages for 100 years. Kurt was such a nice man, and oh, what a beautiful ink line he always had. I hadn't thought about that in years. Oh, good. But am I jaded? Yeah, I have to be jaded, I guess.
Yeah, which actually leads into the next question I was going to ask. Is there a skill that you had to learn as the president that no one prepares you for?
Tons of them. You learn bits and pieces. The main shift when I shifted over to being the president from being the publisher was Jeanette had left to become a movie producer. And up until then, she'd been the primary person working creatively with the movie and TV folks. I had done most of the deals and handled the animation side of it pretty much. But the live shows and the live films were something she focused on. Okay, so I've got to work with this. And a lot of it wasn't my natural skill. When we were making Batman Begins, the Warner Brothers studio executive, who was the core day-to-day contact on the movie at one point, turns to me and says, "Paul, it's so exciting. We got Gary Oldman to play Commissioner Gordon." And I said, "That's great. What's he been in?" Oscar. Said, I wasn't doubting that he was great and the right choice, but I'd love to look at some of his work and enjoy it, and I'm ignorant about that, so I had to do homework on a whole bunch of things, and I mean, I never got to be a shred as knowledgeable about the movie business as my son is.
Yeah, what an actor, mate! That guy can be anybody.
Yeah, I understand he's doing a phenomenal job in Slow Horses. I haven't had a chance to see that yet.
Oh, I haven't even heard of that one.
It's a lovely series of books. Mick Herron was the writer, and they've done a television adaptation of it.
Okay.
It's either Apple or Amazon, but I have to get around to checking it out.
Cliff, you all good? You having a bit of technical difficulties?
I did. It froze. Normally it freezes and leaves me in, and this time it froze and threw me out.
Well, you can ask your second question out of 500.
Can I get 2 in this time?
Yeah, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
I'm gonna softball the first one. Do you remember a story that you worked on where you actually just had a lot of fun with who you were partnered up with at the time?
Many of them. I mean, Joe Staten was one of my favorite, always been one of my favorite artists to work with. We just did last year a job for the New York City Department of Education, a book that's going to be given out in high schools, telling kids about the early Jewish comic creators, Sketches on the Sidewalk.
My dad would have loved that.
If you give me a ground address, Bo, I'll send you one.
Wow. Thank you.
They made 150,000 of them for the high school, so they gave me like a crate to work with. Keith Giffen in his best days, we were just having a ball doing the Legion and showed them the material.
Yeah.
Getting to work with Kurt Swan, whose work I grew up loving. Murphy Anderson, who's a dear friend, whose work I had grown up on. I mean, so many people along the way. I mean, it shows when you're having fun. I mean, this isn't to say that there aren't great comics that were created by people who were frustrated with each other or pissed with each other, but when the people who are creating them are having fun, I think you can really feel it in the work.
Yeah.
What's the tougher question?
That was a softball question because it's going to go into the other one. I think most people know, and most people point to the Great Darkness Saga. And I am very fond of the Great Darkness Saga, but like I'll let other people talk about it because I feel like you probably have talked about that a lot. I really love. So this is my entry point to the Legion of Superheroes. Okay,
maybe our best cover.
You killed my precious Superboy.
Yeah.
But I will say this is my all-time favorite era of the Legion of Superheroes.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So I love that we kick off with the Legion of Supervillains. It's like, we're going to kill them. That's it. Like, we're going to kill them, and I have a plan. And in my mind, over years of reading comic magazines and fanzines and stuff, I have created this castle in my mind where, Jim Shooter's over here, and you're over here, and the Legion of Superheroes is in the middle. I know it's weird. It's just. Listen, you got to remember, I was like 8 and 9 when I was discovering your works.
Okay.
So I was fascinated
for about 5 years. I don't recall that at any point we were like betting Karate Kid, and I'll see you and raise you a Princess Projectra.
No, but I'll tell you what's funny. So as I was going back and collecting Legion, when I realized that I was totally in love with the Legion, I'm discovering Jim's older stuff and how he introduced Princess Projecta and Karate Kid and Feral Lad and Nemesis Kid. And then I'm reading your stuff and you murdering Karate Kid and Nemesis Kid, which, by the way, one of my all-time favorite stories. The Censor Girl saga. Me and my best friend Eric at the time were out of our minds. Every issue, I'm like, she's Supergirl. It could be Supergirl, but it could be somebody else. And we were back and forth. And then we just never guessed it was good. And I know that it wasn't solid that it was projected for quite some time. Anyway.
No, we knew.
Oh, you definitely knew. Okay. Well, again, I had heard stories that for a little while, it was like, hey, we could kind of rescue Supergirl with this.
That's before we started actually doing the stories.
That was before you actually started doing it. Okay. So anyhow, my friend Eric and I are back and forth. And then when we get that issue with the reveal, first of all, I mean, there's a million things happening. We love the reveal, but then when Mentala is murdered and it was just so intense because now Eric and I both also read X-Men, and at that point in our lives, Legion of Superheroes was the only other comic like the X-Men titles that was really doing long-form storytelling. So the fact that Mentala, who we met and again, from my childhood perspective, now that I'm older, I could see more, right? But from back then, Eric and I are going back and forth. We're like, oh my God, Mentala was in the tryouts so many issues ago. Oh my God, they murdered her. Anyhow, needless to say, I just had a really great time with that series. You know, I loved it. And when you start, and listen, and now I guess this is where I'm going. Of course, like I was young, I was like becoming aware that I was gay. I was obsessed with Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet. I was obsessed. I'm like, they're totally in a relationship. I don't care what anybody tells me. I was like, they're together. But and it's funny because I loved everything you did with her from when she came back and realized that she had lightning power again, right? To going back to Legion, walking in and demanding a spot in the Legion and saying, I don't care about the stupid rule about duplicate powers. I'm coming back and I'm Lightning Lass, and I just kicked a whole bunch of people's asses to get here. Like, I loved all of that. And then I loved the relationship that she developed with Vi. And this was like an ongoing thing in my life. Like, you know, I'm reading, I'm getting older, I'm learning more about myself. And I was reading deeper into those characters. And I don't know. It just makes me wonder, like, what was your thought on the long journey for all these characters? Oh my God, I left out the Universal freaking project, which was also amazing.
That's one of my favorite stories.
You were so respectful of continuity, even when continuity was increasingly difficult. And you made these pieces fit, and you made the characters' growth so organic, which I just, even to this day, I don't see that happening enough with writers. So I don't even know if this is a question anymore. So much statements, you know, but like I really enjoyed it. And I don't know. I guess I want to know, did you have a lot of fun growing those characters along in that time frame?
Oh, absolutely. It was always great screwing with their different lives and playing God. A couple of thoughts on what you said.
Yeah, politics, intrigue. I'm telling you, underrated guys. Legion of Superheroes, 3rd series, intergalactic politics, treachery. The freaking Secret Legion Revenge Squad. Like, you think, okay, Superboy dead, continuity's fixed. No, they're like, let's make a secret team that's going to go to the end of time to battle Time Trapper for revenge for what he has done to us. Like, I love that. I just loved all that shit. I was so into it. So into it.
You should be my publicist, Cliff.
I would love. You just let me know what show you're going to be at. I'll be there screaming your praises.
Well, a couple of observations. I mean, one, the long-term plans were usually only out as far as I was going to write the story. So, you know, maybe 5 or 6 issues out, I had a sense of where the characters were going. And then you figured out what the next step was. Comics, by its nature, didn't allow you to plot, 3 years ahead. At least very few people did. It doesn't shock me to find out that you're gay.
Oh, no, what a big surprise.
Well, at the time I was writing the Legion, we're talking about the 80s for that run, the vast majority of gay men in America were closeted. Maybe slightly more gay women were out, but not by much. And I had no sense that I had a significant gay readership. And there were no male gay relationships in Legion at that time. The Shrinking Violet Lightning Lass storyline, I think, was clear, but didn't have any like bright neon signs saying, hey, look what we're doing over here. Look at this. Look at, they're going to go do naughty stuff. And years later, I noticed that there was a disproportionate, apparently, number of gay guys coming up getting their old Legion comics signed. Huh?
So thank you for being there for us, is all I could say, even if you didn't know it at the time.
I took Phil Jimenez out to lunch, who's a wonderfully talented writer and artist of comics.
You worked together on Adventure Comics, yes.
We've got to do some stuff from that, and we were friendly in other ways. And Phil was a Legion fan growing up in that era. and is a gay man, a very out gay man his whole life. I took him to lunch. I said, what the fuck? And Phil's analysis as a creative person was to say, well, you were writing a story that was about blue people and green people and orange people getting along with white people. And I think we figured out that if they were all getting along with each other, they'd be getting along with us too. And the costumes were really hot. And I said, well, I didn't have anything to do with the costume part of it, so I can't claim any credit for that. But I do fundamentally believe that if we don't all get along, the planet gets blown up. And we've got to stop being divisive. And I think if you read any writer's work, you get some of their philosophy, some of their politics. I don't mean politics in terms of which party they voted for, though frequently that's easy enough to figure out too. But politics in terms of how they think the world ought to be organized, what the world's priorities ought to be. And I think you can see that in any writer that you've ever read in any quantity. And some of mine leaked through in all of that. And I told that story. I had the honor of getting an honorary doctorate about a year and a half ago from Pace University where I teach. And I was doing the graduation speech for them. And that story was the center of what my speech was, because it was about the idea that every story that's created has 3 levels of meaning. It has the surface meaning of what the storyteller is telling you. It has a second level of meaning in what was going on in the storyteller's mind that influences all of that you can infer from it if you try. And then it has the meaning that the reader brings to it. And you are not going to interpret it, Cliff, without looking at it through your life experience. And that's not the same as Beau's, it's not the same as Sharif's, and it's not the same as mine. And some small part of that comes from your sexuality, but some other parts of your influence, how you were brought up, what happened to you, what kind of work you do, what you've seen, what you've experienced, all that comes to how you're viewing the story and what you're inferring from it. And we have to be conscious of that as storytellers, that's what we're creating. And that's all important.
And it is important because, sorry, Cliff.
No, I was going to say, of course it's important. And every creator I've met who's had an influence in my life, it has been, there's something there, whether they know it or not. Phil didn't even realize what importance he had in my life. I bombarded him at a show once, and I was going on about his run on Wonder Woman and how amazing it was. And he actually came up to our local comic shop almost 15 years ago. We took him to dinner. We had such a great time. And that was at the time of Adventure Comics. And I don't know. I just like it's funny, right? Because like some of us, especially when it's so hard to find people to relate to in your life, the arts can help you get through that.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's true.
I first discovered Paul through my father, who was always telling me the important Jewish people that are around today. Because as a kid, you could have, it like I think Danny actually said this the other day. It doesn't matter if your name is John Smith; kids are still going to pick on you no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. And being a long-haired, glasses-wearing Jewish kid, I had a lot of different things that kids could pick on me with. And when I used to come home and, cry about my day or whatever, my dad used to turn around and go, yeah, look, you might get picked on now. I won't tell you the other advice he gave me, with, things, but he'd turn around and he'd say, look at this. And he'd pull out this book and he'd show me all the important Jewish people. And then I'd be like, yeah, but, he'd say like the Three Stooges or whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, but those are people that aren't around now. And he'd go, oh, yeah. And then he'd turn around and he'd go, look at this. President of DC Comics, Paul Levitz, is Jewish. You're telling me that you can't amount to something one day? And I'm not kidding. It really does help. So whether it's, sexuality being referenced in comics and represented, or behind that as well. I'm sure Sharif could probably tell a story about his heritage somewhere in comics.
I mean, comics have always, at least in American comics, have always appealed to the outsiders, whether that's your sexuality, your religion, your ethnicity, or just your geekness. That I got as much shit for how many books I was reading, because I grew up in a time and a place in Brooklyn. I don't know, 75% of the kids in my public school must have been Jewish, and the vast majority of the teachers were Jewish. So you don't know that the wider world, we're actually a really small drop in the bucket. But the narrow universe that I had as a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, everybody around me was the same thing. But the number of books I read, I remember one of the kids giving me shit. You've got a new book in your briefcase every day. You're just doing that to show off to the teachers. No, I just finished the last one and I want to read a new book. Is that okay? Everybody's an outsider on some count, and fiction, fantasy, whether it's delivered on a screen or delivered in print, helps. It's our own worlds.
Well, we are reaching an hour, and I don't know how much time you have, Paul. So we just want to say, how much time do you have, just so we don't waste your time, because we can be here for hours if we wanted.
I can't give you hours and hours, but I can take a few more minutes if you want.
All right, fantastic. Well, we do have one question from the audience here, and that is, what was your favorite run and collab at DC?
It was usually whatever I was working on at the time. Looking back, it would have to be the Legion or the Justice Society work. Those were the two things that I had the most fun on. But earlier than that, even Phantom Stranger, which I look back on now and say, oh God, I was young. I wish I had known what I was doing better. But it was a ball while I was doing it. Acting, getting to work with Jim Aparo. The boards would come in on every story, and they were just so crisp and so beautiful. It's such a great line, such a great storyteller.
But was there any particular aspect of storytelling that draws you regardless of what titles were?
I mean, I'm more conscious of the writing than I am the art in general. But I realized in recent years that my early taste was really driven by large quantities of characters in different uniforms. So Legion attracted me, Justice League attracted me, Teen Titans attracted me, Challengers and Doom Patrol not as much. They were both well-written DC books. I rarely got to see the Marvel stuff when I was very young because I had a limit of how many comics I could buy every week, so I didn't disappear completely down the rabbit hole. But even then, when I fell in love with Marvel, it was Avengers, not Fantastic Four or X-Men. It's an odd way of sorting the world, perhaps. And I'm obviously not a fashionista. My granddaughter turned around, who is a fashionista at 4, turned around one day and said, Grampy, don't you wear anything but jeans? No, I had to wear suits long enough, Cassidy. I wear what I'm comfortable with whenever I can these days. But obviously the visual of the costumes made a big difference to me. Go figure.
So how do you find the current state of DC? Do you find yourself, disagreeing with certain decisions, certain ways that it's being run now? Are you over the moon with how things are being run now? Are you down the middle? What are your basic thoughts now?
It's their turn. I don't read a lot of the current books. Once in a while I dip into something. Happy to see that they've been doing very well this past year. The Absolute stuff seems to have really hit a good note with the audience. But it's their turn. And when I got up from the desk, I said to the guys who were remaining, This is your moment. You should rethink every decision in the process. The right answer should never be Paul said we have to do it that way because it's not. It's your turn. Maybe what I said was still right. Maybe it's not still right. But regardless, it's up to you now. And they've gone on. Jim's a good guy. Marie Javins, who's the editor-in-chief, is a good soul, very hardworking, and very dedicated to the material and to the creative people. Bunch of other people there whose names would be less familiar to you, who are still there from my time or who I've gotten to know over the years since. Mostly very good folks, trying to do the right thing. I don't have access to enough information to feel like I can sit in full judgment of any of it. And the thing I'm least competent to judge is the creativity, because that's subjective. And I'm prejudiced to what I loved. And what I loved isn't where the audience is these days. I'm not supposed to be the audience. God, they were primarily producing comics for 69-year-old men. That's a pretty stupid business model. So God bless them.
And if you could pick a character at all, doesn't necessarily have to be DC, that you feel like you represent, or you feel the most for, or you feel like is yourself the most, what character would you choose?
Oh, none of them are myself. I'm much more close to Clark Kent than any of them. And not Clark Kent with a good secret identity, just Clark Kent with the tripping over things and goofing it up. I was a Superman kid. That was the material that I loved. But I'm pretty mortal.
I would be remiss in saying that we have not yet said g'day to our full lifers. These are the people that do spend a little bit of money every single month and help Aussieverse with the financials in the background. Thank you oh so much. You can see the YouTube logo next to these other names. Go check out those channels as well. If you want to be a full lifer, please click the link and join now. Otherwise, if you want to support Aussieverse another way, the best way is simply by subscribing to the channel and liking the videos. Guys, Paul is going to be disappearing soon, so ask those questions right now that you feel like you're going to miss out on.
So my question is, where are you guys based? Because I have spent a total of 36 hours in Australia in my life. This is not the right way to go to Australia. But,
I am in Melbourne.
Okay.
And we have a spare room. So when you come back...
We're threatening to do a cruise to Australia and New Zealand one of these years. So we'll see.
Fantastic. And Sharif is at the other side of Australia, in Queensland.
Okay.
Which is probably a better holiday destination, if I'm being honest.
but also bring your highest SPF, because they have the highest rate of skin cancer in all of Australia.
Oh, shush you.
Shush me. I have a good friend who lives there. This is just the truth, And Paul, I live on the East Coast. I'm in Newport, New York, where I enjoy winter.
Quite a one. It was 0 here this morning.
Yeah, it was -7 when I woke up this morning. It was something else.
Newport is gorgeous. I love Mohonk. We always used to do our DC executive retreats and editorial retreats up at Mohonk.
Wow. In the meantime, I go nuts just trying to have the breakfast buffet for Mother's Day with my mother up there.
Oh, lovely. That's a good boy.
Yeah.
If you use your SPF, you'll find.
No, it's true. You got to use the FPF, but like SPF. But my friend and his mom both actually face different times battle with skin cancer, and they're in Queensland.
Okay.
Paul, when fans do look back at your career, what are you hoping that they remember most? And before you answer that, it's, again, I'm repeating myself with Danny the other day, because as a human, we everybody wants to be immortalized. You want your name to live on, and you've been able to accomplish that with obviously your endeavors and what you've done. So how does that make you feel, knowing that you're always going to be there? And as I just said, what do you hope they remember the most?
Well, you're right. You're right, Bo. What my phrasing for it is, you want to leave some footprints in the sand.
Hmm.
You'd like ideal for your life to have had some meaning, whether it's people still reading a story. I'm delighted that people are still reading the Great Darkness saga, 40 odd years after we did it. We never would have expected that at the time. There was nothing in American comics where something was still being read for the story that long. Things were being read because, let's see what Superman was at the very beginning, or what, kind of like looking at a traffic accident. It's terrific. We were a little ahead of our time in some ways, but it apparently is still readable.
Listen, even people who don't quite understand the Legion of Superheroes, the fact that it's got a strong, slow build, like they're fighting these creatures, and the more momentum we get towards the reveal, the more you realize that who they're fighting are dark counterparts of popular DC characters. And then that moment where they're like, oh no, and then boom, a full page of Darkseid. Or that Darkseid mind controlled the Daxamites and had them heat vision their planet to reflect his face, and that would remain for years as part of DC Comics lore. Like, it is just such a great there's no other time outside of the Justice League that Darkseid showed up and proved to be such a freaking menace, and it's so great. And I'm not sure it's the first time Darkseid was established as a heavy hitter, but I think it was the first time where I was like, holy crap, like it's the 30th century and Darkseid's still coming at people. And I love that. I love that, like, the essence of Highfather played a role in it. I like that he dismissed Superboy and Supergirl with a boom tube, and the Legionnaires opened and Superboy and Supergirl came flying back through time and hit him again. And they're like, no, you can't get rid of us that easy. Like, it was just so beautifully executed between the storytelling that got us there, the art and the action for the finale, the continual ramifications, the annual about Vladius and his true origin, and what Darkseid did to Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. Freaking great. Like, that story is a lore freaking knock you out of the park. Like, this is why you have so many Legion fans.
You've got to help with this job, Cliff. You've got it sewed up. The other thing that I'm proud of is the enduring reputation seems to be that I helped make the business a better business for the town. And a lot of people were involved in that on many levels. I did a lot of work to help get the comic shops in America better established and a better business. It's a very tough way to make a living. But those are the things that I care about. We made a difference in starting the graphic novel in America as a real business. I'm teaching now. That's what I mostly do these days. That my writing is not in tune with where the marketplace is now. So there's not like a line of people saying, "I've got a project for you." And once in a while, you touch a kid's life, and you see them go on to a career path they might not have discovered otherwise, or get a job because you gave them a recommendation in the right place. And that's more footprints in the sand. It's someone else who hopefully will remember you, and where you made a difference in the deal.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
Is there a story or achievement that you feel personally is underrated?
I mean, I think Universo Project, which Cliff mentioned as a favorite, in some ways is a better structured story than the other Legion stories that we've talked about. When I first met Brad Meltzer and had a long conversation with him, he turned out to be a Legion fan, and he battened down on that one, is that he felt the best mystery that we had done. And Brad Meltzer sure should be a good judge of mysteries with the success he's had writing them over the years. That and The Origin of the Justice Society, which is one of my favorite stories, maybe the favorite story that I ever did. And because that's so locked into a continuity that no longer really exists in that form, it doesn't show up nearly as often. But hopefully it's still well remembered.
And on the flip side, is there any story that you wanted to tell but didn't see the day in print?
A few along the way. There was a Batman 4 or 5-parter that I was working on with Dennis Cowan that got scrapped midway for reasons I don't even really fully understand. That would have been real fun to finish up. I wish we'd had the chance to do that. Dennis is such a wonderful artist. And got a little piece of it published in one of the DC reprint trade paperbacks or hardcovers that I worked on, but never got to finish the story. Other projects that I've developed along the way that have not come to fruition. But I'm not a writer who's got a stack of scribbled notebooks of things I intend to do that haven't gotten done. Mostly I react to like Firehouse Dog when someone calls and says, Paul, do you have any Superman ideas? No, Julie, but give me 15 minutes. I'll be back with one. That's how I grew up as a writer. One of my disadvantages that's really affecting me in recent years is I never really learned the spec writing discipline. I never had to. And I have only limited motivation to do it now because I don't need the money, and my grandchildren are calling saying, can you come over here and play with me? That's pretty distracting. But not much in the way of what I was so lucky in what I got to do. Why am I going to sit there and say, here's the one drop that could have topped the glass off? It's not half full. It's full and a half to start with. It's probably a good place to finish up.
Oh, beautiful statement from Matt.
Yeah. With tough times in life, please know your hours of ideas and efforts have helped many escape into a safe and less scary place, a breath of air, and a place to stand a while until the sky's clear.
Thank you so much.
Well said, Matt.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, is there anything else you want to talk about, guys, before we wrap up? Because I've got one last important question, but we'll wait for that after a word from our sponsor. That's right, Cliff. I didn't word Paul up, so this is going to be interesting how it ends. Ladies and gentlemen, Comic Bookaroo.
Comic Bookaroo, proud sponsors of Aussieverse for all your comic book needs. Graphic novels, hardcovers, omnibuses, single issues. Don't forget to pre-order every Sunday at Comic Bookaroo.
That's right.
Is that a physical store or just a web store?
Web store.
Cool. Well, good luck to them.
They're doing very well. They've been our sponsors for a while, so we're quite happy with that.
Cool.
Now, Paul, my instincts told me to have a conversation with you prior to going to the air and wording you up, but that would have been cheating. So we're not going to do that. Cliff is very nervous about how this is going to go down because he has so much respect for you. But I like to think to myself that it doesn't matter on the caliber of the guest. We do need to treat everybody the same. So therefore, sir, my last question to you is, if I was to say to you, what is Aussieverse? What would your answer be?
Seems to be a entertaining podcast down under.
Okay, that's a good answer. I like that. Unfortunately, that's incorrect though, because the correct answer is Aussieverse is and always will be for life. Thank you very much, Paul, for joining us today. It has been an absolute freaking honor. I know that you and I have been talking for a good couple of years, but thank you so much for finally coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure. Cliff, thank you for joining me today as well with short notice.
My pleasure.
Sharif, you get no credit because you have to be here. You're Aussieverse. But everybody else out there, thank you oh so much. Go check out his website here. That has a lot of where Paul has been seen. Paul, is there any closing words or anything you want to say before we go?
Next project up is coming out September 3rd. Bloomsbury has its line of those little Marvel Age books, and I did one entitled Marvel Explodes, From the Bullpen to Big Business. It's sort of a business history of Marvel from 67 to 75 when the company was changing radically. And I've had a lot of fun with it as a comic fan looking back on the good stuff. And hopefully people will enjoy it. So keep an eye out for that.
Fantastic. Excellent. I love it. Maybe we can get you back someday and we'll talk a bit more, because I know that between me and Cliff, I've got a lot more questions to ask you. So one day we'll have you back. Stick around after this. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Take
See
care.
you next